What piece of junk did you find that turned out to be valuable? Years ago, I bought a condo in foreclosure. We couldn't go inside, just look from outside and put in a bid. My bid won. When I went inside the place, it was pretty trashed. I checked all the rooms, calculating the costs of getting it back into shape. At the end of my walkthrough, I went into the garage and saw there was a car under a tarp. I pulled the tarp back and saw a 1972 Barracuda in nearly mint condition. I'm not much of a car person, so I can't really gauge how valuable that is. How much does it go for? I know 1972 is old, so it must be high. It's just a very cool car, and very collectible. It's probably worth around $50,000. Maybe more. It's insured for $100,000. I've seen them sell at auction for much, much more. I found a small envelope with a few inches of wire in a junk shop. Bought it $2 because it had some faded penciling about troy ounce. Turned out to about 1.5 troy ounces of platinum wire. Sold it for $600. I found a very small, round piece of metal on the floor in my workplace. I couldn't figure out what the item was and knew I should just discard it, but felt compelled to keep it for some reason. That afternoon, my coworker was distraught. The unique type of battery that her cochlear implant needed fell out, and was probably in a dumpster somewhere because the cleaners had come through. I gave her the weird piece of metal in my pocket, and she almost burst into tears from relief. Either that or she was crying because she thinks I'm the type of person to steal batteries from cochlear implants. Man, now every time I see a random piece of metal, I'll think of this and keep it. A few years ago, I was looking through the Goodwill website that lets you bid on stuff that you find. I stumbled across one of the Texas Goodwill's pages, and then saw an auction for a huge box of phone accessories that no one was bidding on. I started looking through all the pictures, started researching some of the brands, and started realizing the whole box was worth a decent bit. I took a shot and made my bid. Someone else saw what I saw and started a bidding war with me, but I eventually won with a bid of $106, then $24 for shipping. Few days go by, and I finally get the box. Well, 2 boxes, and they were both huge. Started taking inventory, and ended with 100 iPhone chargers, 100 Android chargers, about 250 iPhone 8 cases in all different styles, 80 battery packs, a few iPad cases, and about 1,000 screen protectors. Turned my $130 total investment into an eBay business, and made almost $8,000 in about 9 months. Found a fake Cartier watch in Goodwill for $10. Bought it because it still looked nice. But it's a real Cartier watch, and it's worth $1,000 plus. Keeping it because I'd never buy myself something like that. Well, a dickhead couch surfer who crashed in my guest room for a few months left behind a 1970s Fender Super Twin Tube amp worth $1,800 he didn't know about. So my family went to a nearby town's vintage sale thing. My dad found this dirty old glass milk bottle, and he got excited when he found it. I didn't know what he found so exciting since it was just a milk bottle. After we got home, he explained that it was a milk bottle from a dairy farm. One of the co-founders of that farm was my great-great-grandfather, on my dad's side. When one of the world wars began, he sold it off to the other founder. Not much monetary value, but a lot of emotional value. Wholesome. Dad carried around a junk guitar for 50 years. Ugly as hell sunburst Gibson acoustic, circa 50s or 60s, can't remember, that he eventually sanded down into something prettier. When I was learning, he took it to be tuned up by our neighbor who owned a shop and was a collector. Dude came back exasperated and told us that my dad had sanded about $50K off the guitar, and that it would have been totally worthless if he hadn't left the logo on. At least it sounds like the neighbor was the most shocked party. Sounds like your dad just loved that guitar and wasn't necessarily considering selling it. It seems priceless to him, but I dunno, maybe not? How did he react? Oh yeah, that guitar hasn't gone anywhere. It was given to him by his father figure when he was young, and it's been with the family ever since. He was just like, "Oh dude, that's sick, can't believe I fucked up that bad." It's since become a fun party story for him to tell. My friends and I were at a concert and found this broken bracelet under a merch table as we were about to leave the venue. It had an interesting engraving on it, something about being a son and friend. Because it was broken, we were thinking about just tossing it, but ended up throwing it in our backpack to bring to the office later. My friend worked at the venue, so she was going to turn it in. The next week I was browsing Reddit on a thread of the same kind of music we were listening to at the show, and just as I was about to fall asleep, someone's post caught my eye. It said something like, "This is a long shot, but I lost something," and it piqued my interest, so I clicked it. It was someone from that same show asking if anyone had found a silver bracelet. Turns out it was the same one we found, and it seemed to be a special gift from the person's parent, and they were looking for it. We connected and got the bracelet returned to the guy, and the whole interaction is actually in my Reddit history. It's a fun, albeit quick, read. Someone gave me a hideous purse out of a box on its way to Goodwill. I sold it on eBay for $1,100. I've had some good flips, but that was the best. I was at an estate sale and bought a few paintings. Sweet lady told me to take the last one I liked as package deal since I ran out of cash. Turns out one of them is a pretty rare original print worth about $3,500, and I paid maybe $30 for all 4 prints and paintings I wanted. My aunt died, cancer, tragic. My family did what they always do, go into mine mode. There was a tiny painting I always liked. I asked my cousin, she could have cared less. She's gotta have the 10-year-old Buick. Fight. The painting is worth a crazy amount. The car is in the dump now. I will have the painting forever. All these stories about paintings turning out to be worth a lot of money is making me want to go and buy random paintings. When I was younger, I was 3 years old, I would rummage around the drawers and cabinets in my grandmother's house, just adventuring and discovering, which is what I called it. I happened to find this old folded piece of paper, but it only took 3 seconds for me to just disregard it and push it aside. I think I was trying to get something else that I saw. After I finished with whatever I had, I picked up the piece of paper to throw it away. Out of childlike curiosity, I opened it up and saw the words in it. It looked like a letter. It seemed important, so I gave it to my grandmother, who gave it to my mother when she came to pick me up. My grandmother is blind. It was a love letter from my grandfather to my grandmother. That really made their day. Weird painting of a cat with birds on its back no one wanted. Paid $20, worth $400. Investments on paintings happen like that. My mom got a painting for $300, but after a while, it now costs $15,000. She is waiting to sell it. Old folded up piece of paper in the bottom of a box my dad had I found cleaning up the house, torn up and faded. Turned out to be a 90-year-old original Jean Carla poster worth roughly $20,000 after spending $1,000 for restoration. A first or second edition of the Oregon Trail book. It's a bit damaged, so not that valuable, but still a few hundred more than the $15 I paid for it. A really old dollar bill I found in an old Bible. It's worth around $100. I found a misprint $1 bill that had 2 zeros after the 1. Turns out it's worth about $100. Well, if my mom were to respond to this thread. Original Harry Potter first edition Philosopher's Stone novel. It's very rare to find them and they sell pretty well, but she threw it out. So salty. My mom in college worked for a small grocery store. She was sweeping aisles one day when she found a bracelet and just threw it in the lost and found for someone to come back for later. Months went by and I guess the employees got to check the lost and found for anything they wanted if no one claimed it. She remembered the bracelet and just grabbed it. She got it home and cleaned it up. It ended up being a Tivol bracelet wrapped with real diamonds. It's since been turned into a new wedding band for her, LOL. Bought an old copy of The Wizard of Oz at a flea market for $30. When I got home and researched it more, it turned out to be a first edition. How much is it worth? $31, haha. I've been told by a local bookstore around $5,000. I haven't sold it though. I still have it. It's in really good condition. Saw someone selling a copy of Chrono Trigger for SNES about 20 years ago. It was a great price and dude said for another $10 he'd throw in a bunch of other games he didn't want, including Star Fox. I was trying to start a collection at the time and figured he'd give me a box of sport games and shit you usually see filling pawn shops etc, but I figured it's $10 so agreed. He gave me the box and thanked me for taking all the crap off his hands. I got in the car and looked through the games and there was a bunch of bad sports games and a few other games, but in amidst it all was this game that said Star Fox Weekend on it. I was like, what the fuck is that? Check eBay and the thing was selling for like $300 at the time. It's like a rare SNES cartridge they gave out to winners of a competition, or to other people who won one from Nintendo Power etc. I couldn't bring myself to bring it back, tell him. The thing goes for like $1,000 on eBay now. Bought a cheap Martin guitar because I was broke and wanted to play. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it's worth a few grand now because it was a limited edition thing. It's still appreciating to the point where I had to insure it. Cleaning out my grandparents' house after my grandma passed away and had to throw out or donate actual hundreds of books. Most were worth nothing and very worn down. In the second to last box were original copies of the Harry Potter books. She bought each one on the day of their release. What piece of junk? Did you find that turned out to be valuable? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.